evening to everybody. I'm Andrea Servida. I'm leading the task force eIDAS, which put together the proposal and conducted the negotiation with the co-legislators for the adoption, which happened last year. As an engineer, I couldn't resist to present slides. It seems that engineers could not speak if they don't have slides in front of them. What I wanted to convey with the slides is just the context in which eIDAS is indeed to be rolled out at the European level, and even more importantly, why, because that is often the question, why there is no mentioning of the digital identities in the digital single market. Next, please. eIDAS is in itself a means to boost trust, and trust is about making things to happen and to turn option and ideas into economy. The digital economy is something real, something concrete. Is something that is somehow already pervasive to our society, to our daily practices. But if you look at next, please, what is happening actually in terms of digital single market, you can see that cross-border in Europe is only 4%. Why so? Because there is a gap, a trust and security gap. There is no confidence that things could be happening at the cross-border level. And this is where indeed the eIDAS regulation enter into the picture. Next, please. Because it goes about boosting trust and making things happening. Highlighted there in red the pillars and the actions on trust and security that is part of the digital single market strategy, which is a set of focused actions on which indeed the Commission is going to concentrate the effort. But of course, the leverage, everything that is in the pipeline or is being finalized or had already been adopted is going to be rolled out as the eIDAS regulation. Next, please. What is eIDAS about? eIDAS is about cross-border. It is about trust. It is about convenience. It is about seamless experience. It is about making it possible, as the chair just expressed, for people to really conclude the transaction in a way that is secure, trustworthy, and even more importantly, accountable. What I think is important for the eIDAS regulation is first that is making the rule of the game, the rule of engagement, transparent. Everybody knows what is indeed that is to be followed in order to be able to rely on services, to provide services, to make services to be part of the daily transactions. And of course, this is going to be beneficial to the citizen, to the business, to the public administration, only if we will be able to use and have access to these services and leverage the services in all the environment that we are used to consider as the natural environment for our interaction. So we should not be confronted with moving our trust means from one environment to another. Am I conducting a transaction using GSM, or I'm using an iPad, or a desktop, or something else? It doesn't matter. The user experience should be seamless and convenient. And that is where indeed the Commission and the Member States have hugely invested in the past. Next, please. What is about eIDAS is about trust services like electronic signature, timestamping, electronic register delivery services, but even more importantly, electronic identification. And electronic identification is something that has been addressed in the context of eIDAS to support the mutual recognition of systems which are recognized at the national level as suitable for legal person and natural person to conduct a transaction with public administration. I think that is extremely important because it relies on the responsibility of the member states to identify what is indeed the most appropriate for their citizens, for their organization, in order for them to have a seamless, trustworthy and secure experience when accessing public services. However, this is not only about e-government. Next, please. Why? Because providing the possibility for a party, a person, to use for online access electronic identification means for which he has a level of confidence that is much higher than what might be ad hoc the offering from a service provider or a relying party is certainly more convenient. Why? Because to some extent there is a better understanding of what is going to happen, and the better understanding makes it possible for these means to be used to build trust. Identity should not be somehow worked out only as an economic driver in relation to how to make money out of the knowledge that a party may develop about a person, but should be actually mean that will empower the user to be able to act on the properties, on the attributes, on the features which are needed for the transaction in order to have better terms for the transaction to be concluded. And all this should be safe and secure. And this is extremely important because it's what is making the European approach so different from what is now the narrative of many providers in the world. Next, please. Is a digital identity something that is just a fancy tool to have? No, it is a business opportunity. It is actually a societal tool in the hands of everybody. It is something that is going to make easier for regulatory requirements to be discharged. Think of what is under the Anti-Money Laundering Directive in relation to know your customer. Everything that is related to identifying the customer via a paper process, which implies the collection of certain important data, which then have to be stored, secured, and managed through the life cycle of the document and of the customer. If you can rely on electronic identification means which are notified, which therefore, as of the end of 2018, will be accepted cross-border by member states and public administration in other member states, and the member states will be so keen to open up those infrastructure to the private sector, you will be able to actually meet the requirement know your customer just by relying on electronic identification means, which indeed will contribute to make the digital single market a reality. If the digital single market becomes a reality, then of course, more opportunities will be created, better prices will be offered, more growth opportunity will be there for everybody, those who are providing services and those who are consuming the services. But it's also about making it possible for consumer, citizen, public administration to rely on attestations which are secure and fitting the need for the transaction, which means no full identification up front just because I need to authenticate a party that I don't see, but the reliance on trusted credential being provided by recognized or certified trust service provider, identity providers, would make it possible for things to be tailored to what is in the need. Next, please. Where we stand in somehow ahead of what is indeed the major rollout of the Implementing Act, the next please, which had been timed in the regulation as an obligation for the Commission to provide secondary legislation to better specify the how the requirements in the regulation would indeed be met. And this is extremely important, in particular in relation to electronic identification. And we had just last week the vote of the committee on the draft Implementing Act that you see here. Next, please. Is this something that is going to happen just by a piece of legislation? Not at all. We need to get the party involved. We need to get the public administration to be leading in the way in which they offer services based on this type of credential. But even more importantly, we need the private sector to be allowed to use this type of credential to make it possible for their customer to have a much more convenient user experience and seamless user experience. Last slide. Next, please. This is not just about legislation, it's about huge investment in terms of technological infrastructure, and more is to come under the Connecting European Facilities Framework, which indeed is going to roll out already the first prototype toward the end of the year. However, and that is the last one, next, let's not forget that the issue is not just European, it's global. And we are ahead of the game. We have the narrative, we have the technology, we have the policy, we have the rule of engagement, and we have shown that the federating solution, it was working within 28 or between 28 different jurisdictions, which of course do share a set of important values. And if it works for Europe in a federated environment, there is no reason why it should not be working for international engagement. If we would be able to promote it internationally, it would be a good opportunity for us, for our industry, for our service provider, but even more importantly for our citizens and small medium enterprises who may leverage those credentials to really conduct transactions internationally. Thank you.